For this week's direct instruction, we will be reviewing the important events in chapters 14 through 17 of the Red Badge of Courage. Throughout the video, there are a couple questions that I would like you to answer. I suggest that when the question is shown, that you pause the video, answer the question in the submission box for the assignment, and then return to the video and continue. Let's begin with the important events of chapter 14. Chapter 14 is centered around change. Wilson is changed from loud and ready for a fight to a caring soldier who seems to think deep thoughts. Henry, we begin to see a change in him as well. He respects the change in Wilson, and he remembers to tell Wilson about Jim's death. So he's becoming less self-absorbed. He's beginning to think of others besides himself. In chapter 15, Henry is again rationalizing his behavior. He sees Wilson as weaker than he is, partly because of the packet of paper from earlier in the novel that Wilson had given him, gives Henry a sense of power over Wilson. And Henry begins to see himself as great again. This brings us to question 1. Once again, Henry is showing us his instability, this time at the expense of Wilson. Which character do you find stronger, Wilson or Henry? Why? Chapter 16. Crane uses the dialogue between the soldiers to help move the plot forward. Okay, so we start to see a lot of movement in this chapter. In this chapter, with his newfound confidence, Henry speaks out against the general. He's not happy with the decisions that they're making. The commentary in this chapter related to those in charge mirrored many of the newspaper articles at the time. It seemed as if the North had few strong military leaders, and this led to Lincoln firing a lot of generals and replacing them. So what was being reported in the paper is that the North lacked control and leadership, and because of that, Lincoln had to take some action. Question number 2. Imagine that this was the first chapter of the book that you had read. How would your opinion of Henry be different if you had not read all the chapters previous to this? What type of soldier would you believe Henry to be? Why? Chapter 17. Henry becomes a hero. As the enemy approaches, Henry's anger finally takes control. He realizes that he has become an animal or a barbarian. His instincts take over and reason is lost as Henry throws himself into battle. He seems to have no fear of the enemy or the possibility of death. This may be the first time that we actually see Henry as a decent soldier. This brings the recap of chapters 14, 15, 16, and 17 to a close. Please make sure that you have answered both of the questions in the video as completely as possible in order to receive full credit. Also, if you have any questions about what you're reading or any of the assignments, please make sure that you contact me as soon as possible so you don't get too far behind. Thank you, and have a great week.